Hi everyone, this is the little yesterday, today and tomorrow that I painted. I have a little bush in the garden and I took a little flower with some leaves and I thought let me paint a quick easy beginner tutorial. So the paper that I use is this Canson XL cold press watercolor paper. It's this brand and I enjoy painting on this because it has a spiral on the side here, so you can turn the pages, keep the papers all together so all your paintings can keep together. You can also paint on the back, and what is fun is you can tear this out as well if you want to. So it's quite amazing watercolor paper. I had fun painting on it, and that is the texture. If you can see, it's not like the hot press watercolor paper from the Arch or Fabriano that's very smooth. So this is the cold press cold press watercolor paper, sorry. So it is quite interesting and fun to paint on, especially for these little short studies that we want to paint that are quick and fun. But let's jump into the tutorial and let me show you what I did with this little flower that I painted. And some of the brushes that I will be using, they're not big, it's about number 2 or 3 sizes of the brushes, a patty eraser, clean glass of water, and then the paper that I will be using. I use this Pinky watercolor set that I have here downstairs, and this is going to be the flower that we will be painting. So I'm just going to draw it out quickly on a piece of paper. I can provide you with the line drawing if you want to, so just let me know. So it's just quick little petals that I want to draw on the paper here. There are 5 little petals, and then the 3 leaves that we will be painting. It's a little bit straight, so I'll fix it now, and I need to make sure that I keep them all the same, basically the same. Just want to make that a little bit higher. I'm going to rub that out with my patty eraser, and then the inside and the little leaves. I'm not going to focus too much on the leaves. We're going to focus mainly on these flowers, the flower little petals. So the leaves will just be there for a little bit of a background, so it's not just a single floating flower. And I'm just going to add in the center of the leaves as well. So the colors will be the basic greens, and then I will use Ultramarine with a mix of Quinacridone Magenta or some rose, whatever I have on the palette. So I'm just going to wet this with some clean water. No puddles. I want to see if this paper absorbs the water quite quickly, because it's the first time that I will be painting on this, so it's quite lovely. And I just move it around. So I don't want any hard lines, so that's why I'm just going to keep an eye on all of the watercolor that I just added on the paper. So now I have a mix of the yellow, so you can use lemon yellow with a little bit of blue, or you can just use some yellow with sap green. And then I just drop it in. Like I said, I'm not going to focus too much on the leaves. I still want to make them look good though, so it's very loose. And this has a bit more of the yellow in the green mix. And I'll just wet the brush, and then I just distribute the paint evenly on that little leaf there. So I drop in a bit more sap green, and the paper is still wet, so this doesn't have any yellow in. A bit more on this petal, sorry, this leaf, not petal. Just drop it in and just move it around a little bit, because we don't want hard lines to form. So now I'm going to use a drop of the sap green mixed with yellow just for the center there, because you can see there's a little bit of a different color with a touch of green in the center of this Yesterday, Today and Tomorrow. So now this is Quinacridone Magenta mixed with French Ultramarine or Ultramarine in this set, and it creates this beautiful purple. So you can manipulate the color, so you can either add a bit more blue, then it will be a blue color, or you can put a little bit more of the Quinacridone Magenta and that will create this magenta color, a bit more with a pink color. And for this section I want a bit more of a purple color, so I mix some more ultramarine in, and then later on I will just adjust the color to whatever I want to. Some petals will be a little bit more pink, some will be a little bit more blue purple. Now I'm going to just darken some of the sap green mix. Now I don't want that color, that is a weird green blue color, I don't want that, so I'm just going to clean it off my palette. So let's mix some there. That's the sap green mix, I just want some more of that. And now I'm going to mix some of the yellow in just to get a similar color to that, but it doesn't matter if it's not exactly. And like I said, I'm going to keep it very simple and loose, so we're not going to add all of the little veins and all of the detail on this little leaf. I make sure though that the petal is dry. Sometimes some of the pigment will flow into that leaf if it's wet, so I just make sure that it is dry. If it's wet, I will just lift it out with my brush. Okay, and a little bit, so I also leave some highlights there. You will see some little sections that are white, so I want some of the paper to shine through. And I just create a little vein in the center there. I'm not going to worry too much for the veins running on the sides. I'm going to clean this out so I can mix the purple mix in here. I just want to make sure all the pigment is removed so that I can mix it in there, and I don't want any yellow in there because it will just create this weird color. So this is the ultramarine mixed with the Quinacridone Magenta color, and then I just go on the edges of the petals again, or the tips of the petals again, and then I wet my brush and I just move it around softly. And now move to the bottom petal and then to the side, but I'm trying to leave a little bit of a highlighted section between the two petals because the other one is still wet. Then I just remove some of the pigment because the leaf is still wet. Some of the pigment went into the leaf. It's not too bad, I can still remove it. And then I just created a little highlighted section on that one petal. I'm just dropping in some more color on this petal. So I'm just darkening certain sections with the tip of my brush. And then I just use my brush to manipulate the color a little bit, soften it again, more darker color. This one has a bit more of the Quinacridone Magenta in, just on the tips there. So just drop it in certain sections, not the whole full petal. And then I play around with my brush and I lift out some pigment with my tip of my brush and I just wipe it on some tissue paper. And then as I leave the color, some of the pigment just flow back into those little sections where I removed the pigment, so I just go back and I just lift it out again with my brush. So just keep an eye on all of those little sections where I want to leave some of the paper shining through. Now I'm just darkening some of the leaves. So this color has a lot more of the sap green mix in. And I just leave some of the paper to shine through, just to create a little bit of texture on some of these little leaves. I want a darker little mix here. Again, just leave some of the paper to shine through, and the side. Same thing. Just move it to soften those lines. And we're just leaving all of those little detail. We're not going to add it all in. We can create a beautiful tutorial that's a little bit more realistic, but we want to keep this simple and easy for beginners. I used a bit of the sepia mix that's on this palette, part of this palette, and I just wanted to darken some of the green parts on these leaves. There's a little bit of a fold in this leaf, so I just wanted to darken it slightly. I waited for it to dry a little bit more, and now I'm going to drop in even more color. Again, I play around with the colors, so some have a little bit more Quinacridone Magenta, some more Ultramarine. And I just look at the petals and I judge it, and I think, okay, maybe that one needs a bit more pink, and then that one needs a bit more blue, and that's how I mix these colors. And then I leave it to dry a little bit, and I just pick it up, move it around with my brush, and I push it towards the pigment that I just dropped in. Some of the purple went onto this little leaf, but I don't mind. It actually quite looked nice because this one, I want this one to be slightly darker. And then I just push it back so it doesn't flow everywhere, so it doesn't cover the whole petal. And on this side too, just a bit more of the pigment. And I just use the tip of my brush to push pigment back. This side too. And this is another fun part that I like about watercolors, where we're now going to add a little bit more detail. So we're going to add the darker pigment. So this is how our flower look right now. Again, I just keep an eye on the paint that I just dropped in, and if I notice some of it just flow and cover the whole petal, I just go back and I lift it out with my brush and I just move it, because I don't want any dark edges on my watercolor right now. And just to show you quickly the colors, this is the Quinacridone Magenta or Quinacridone Violet, some Ultramarine, some of the lemon yellow that I use, and cadmium yellow, and a bit of this sepia color. So you can use Quinacridone Magenta, you can use a little bit of alizarin crimson with your Ultramarine to get the same color. Now I'm going to go in a little bit darker. I just want to adjust the green on these leaves just to add a little bit more texture. And then I want to create those little folds in the petals. So the paper is dry now, so it's completely dry. And then I just darken the tips of these petals. And then you'll notice I move a little line down to create those folds. And then I will just soften the little lines later. So just darken certain little sections. Now with a thicker consistency on my brush, and it is raining, so the paper is going to take a bit longer to dry. It's a bit humid, and I notice that sometimes when it rains the colors just take much longer to dry, so the paper stays wet. Just a bit more of a darker little section there. And then move it down just to darken those little petals. I zoomed into the flower now, so you can't really see my palette, but the pigment on my palette, or the paint on my palette, if you're a beginner and you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, is a lot thicker now. So I'm trying to add more detail. Your paint must be a lot drier on your paper. So I just moved out so you can see exactly the amount of pigment and water that I have on my palette there. And then just add more pigment again on the tips and on the sides of each petal, just to darken it slightly. And those little darker sections that we add in on the petal now will create those little folds and detail on this yesterday, today and tomorrow. and they smell absolutely amazing, especially in the evening. Again, just darkening that petal there, and then darker mix around the center and up onto those petals there. Some I want a bit more darker than others, and I want to zoom in a bit so I can show you what I do. I use the tip of my brush just to create a few little veins on these little leaves that we painted in earlier. So I'm not going to be precise, I'm not going to paint it in exactly. Like I said, this is a loose watercolor painting. Also wrote the date there so that I can remember when I painted it. It's for me, it's a fun mini study. Let's also darken a few little sections on this little leaf. So the consistency is quite thick, but use a brush with a very fine tip, and then just add in those little veins. Just a few here and there. And then I just darken those edges a bit. Some more dark pigment, dark green, dark sub green. And some veins need a bit more pigment on. And this is our beautiful yesterday, today and tomorrow that we painted. Now I can give you a line drawing if you want, so let me know. If you're not a subscriber on YouTube and you want to see future tutorials, please press the subscribe button and the bell button so that you will be notified every time we upload a new video. Have fun, and I will see you soon with a new tutorial.